I was reading ahead in the chapter. Yeah, and that purport. But I read quite a bit ahead of that last night. So. Okay.
She really appreciates
the evening thing.
Mm-hmm.
She's coming physically in the morning.
Yeah.
I've noticed. She's got her lady.
She comes when I do. Okay.
15. Oh yeah, and then Raghunandan. Alright, here it is. Verse 108 and okay. Last. Yes, okay. Haribol, Haribol. Vandeham Shri Guru Shrijutaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Trise Nama. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I am offering my Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. Then I'm offering my same Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. And Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I'm offering my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Gaudiya Guru Varga, and my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. So, we're reading the purport to the 108th verse of Madhya Lila chapter 15, wherein Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told, Diksha Purascharya Vidhi Apeksha Nakari Jiva Sparshe Achandala Sabare Uddhare. This means that one does not have to undergo initiation or execute the activities required before initiation. One simply has to vibrate the holy name with his lips, and thus even a man in the lowest class of Chandala can be delivered. So yesterday we read into the purport, and we're discussing the meaning of the word Diksha, the definition, and how even if a person is born in a Brahmin family, one cannot engage in Vedic rituals without being initiated and having a sacred thread. And although born in a Brahmin family, one becomes a Brahmin only after initiation and the sacred thread ceremony. Unless one is initiated as a Brahmana, one cannot worship the holy name properly. Then these are various verses that are being quoted by Jiva Goswami and our previous acharyas. Prabhupada is including them in the purport. They're all supporting the statement that Mahaprabhu has made in the verse, that Diksha Purascharya. Diksha means the initiation, Purascharya means activities before initiation, and we're going to get into that. There's a verse quoted later on. What is Purascharya? There's 5 types. That's activities before initiation. Vidhi means regulated principles, and Apeksha means reliance on. So Mahaprabhu is making the point that Apeksha na kare, that the chanting of the holy name does not rely upon initiation or purascharya like this. And he's saying, Jiva sparshe achandala sabare udare, that anyone, even if they're a chandala, just by the holy name touching their tongue, they are delivered. So, but in this purport, it will be made clear why such a statement is being made about almost that one would think, well, then it's not necessary to take initiation. But it is, and there's going to be a very clear explanations why. So then I'm just kind of skipping through what we read. There's another quote from the Hari Bhakti Vilas saying that one must be initiated as a Brahmana according to the Vaishnava regulative principles. So here it says, unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, then all his devotional activities are useless. And a person who is not properly initiated can descend again into the animal species. So we discussed most of the class about Sri Bharat Maharaj and becoming a deer. Then there's a quote from the Bhakti Sandarbha, which gives the following quotation from the Tattva Sagara. And this is a famous verse. Prabhupada used to quote this. Yata kanchanatam yati kamsyang rasa vidhanata tata diksha vidhanena dvijatvam jayate nrinam. So this is in Jiva Goswami's Bhakti Sandarbha from the Tattva Sagara. And this is one of Srila Prabhupada's main verses that he would quote in his lecture on the topic of someone becoming a Brahmin by a proper initiation. So the translation of this is that by chemical manipulation, bell metal is turned into gold when touched by mercury. So kanchanatam means gold, kangsyam means mercury, rasavidhanata. So there's some method that actually bell metal can be turned into gold by adding mercury, but you have to know the process. Otherwise they would be doing it. So that's given as an example because in the same way as by a certain process, when mercury touches bell metal, it turns into gold. So similarly, when a person, tata diksha vidanena, when diksha, a person is properly initiated, then dvija, brahmana, jayate nranam, that person can acquire the qualities of a brahmana by initiation. Then the Hari Bhakti Vilas is discussing the Purascharya process, quotes the following verse from Agastya Samhita. So, I was interested to delve a bit more into this. When I was reading it on my own, I read it over like 2-3 times, the verse, and looking at the translation. So, Puja Traikaliki Nityam Japas Tarpanam Evacha. This is from Hari Bhakti Vilas. It is quoted from the Agastya Samhita. Homo Brahmana Bhuktischa Purascharanam Uchyate. And Prabhupada followed this. He makes a point later on in the next paragraph, how in our society, Gurur Labdhasya Mantrasya Prasadena Yathavidhi Panchango Pasana Siddhyai Puraschaitad Vidyate. This is the verse. So here's it's telling, Trai Kaliki. Trai means 3 time periods. In the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, one should worship the deity. Puja. Puja Traikaliki, 3 times. Then japas. You should chant the Hare Krishna mantra. That's the second Purascharya. Tarpanam. He should offer oblations. I don't know how we can, in what context, the oblations, but there must be homo, perform fire sacrifice, and brahmana bhuktish, feed the brahmins. These are the 5. These 5 activities constitute Purascharya. So I think when Prabhupada did the initiations, that was all included, but he's going to explain. To attain full success when taking initiation from the spiritual master, Panchangopasana Siddhyai. Siddhyai means making perfection. So Pancha Anga Upasana. So to attain full success when taking initiation from the spiritual master, one should perform these Purascharya processes. So now, Prabhupada is explaining the word Pura. Purascharya, Pura. Pura means before. And Charya means activities. So, Pura Charya, Purascharya. Due to the necessity of these activities, we do not immediately initiate disciples in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, due to the necessity of these activities. For 6 months, a candidate for initiation must first attend arti and classes in the Shastras, practice the regulated principles, and associate with other devotees. When one is actually advanced in the Purascharya Vidhi, he is recommended by the local temple president for initiation. It is not that anyone can be suddenly initiated without meeting the requirements. When one is further advanced by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra 16 rounds daily, further advanced, and following the regulated principles and attending classes, he receives the sacred thread, the Brahminical recognition, after the second 6 months. That was doubled for me. Because Prabhupada was out of the country, I had to wait a year. Then I had to wait another year to get the Diksha.
I waited another year.
Right. So, just to bring up a point, a relevant point. Relevant point, which which was asked during Gurudev's time, and Gurudev was also criticized for it. That, what is this? Prabhupada never did this. He's giving initiation to anyone on site, right? Not regardless of whether they've, been practicing or not, or currently practicing, or this or that. So that criticism was leveled against Srila Gurudev. Now, first of all, it's not actually true. Because Gurudev set up a system. I remember, especially when he came to Russia the first time, there was 200 persons we had to interview who wanted to get initiated. Their guru, most of them, they had come from ISKCON, most of them. And their guru, Harikesh, had just fallen down, like within that year prior. So, and many of them had been devotees for many years, and also some of them even had their Diksha, the Gayatri mantras, and a lot of them didn't. So at that time, Gurudev, wherever he went, actually, he wanted that the senior devotees would recommend, just like Prabhupada said here, when a temple president recommends. Yeah, and he wanted recommendations. So we actually put together a form and photocopied it for all the questions that we'd ask, and we'd sit there and interview each devotee. And if anyone knew that devotee who we already knew, then we would bring that person there, etc. And it was like about 10 of us who were doing it, senior devotees, because it like 10 people each, 20 people each, times 10 people. So, however, although Prabhupada is saying that it's necessary, but in the case of a Mahabhagavad Vaishnava, and there are quotations, that he became very interested and was very intrigued by Gurudev, and Gurudev wanted to give his mercy. Knowing that much, he gave her initiation, gave her a name. I think he gave her a name, and told her to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So that's the thing. But on an international scale, which Srila Prabhupada was starting his international society, there had to be a standard which was fully authorized and accepted.
He's not following, what he just decided to do.
Yeah. Yeah, he just decided to. That's the thing. He can, and he did. But in general, he wanted a certain standard. So now, there is another verse being quoted from Hari Bhakti Vilas. It's like 3.5 verses. Vina yena nasidhasyan mantro varsha sutayarapi. Purascharya activities. One can be perfect, even by chanting the mantra for hundreds of years. But one who has undergone the Purascharya Vidhi process can attain success very easily. If one wishes to perfect his initiation, he must first undergo the Purascharya activities. The Purascharya process is the life force by which the process of deity worship is not actually necessary, just as the specific prescriptions of the Pancharatra and other scriptures do not have to be followed. The Bhagavatam enjoins that even without practicing deity worship, one can achieve the complete success of human life by any of these, such as simply offering oneself at the Lord's feet for his protection. Nonetheless, Vaishnavas following the path of Sri Narad and his successors, they endeavor to establish a personal relationship with the Lord by receiving the grace of a bona fide spiritual master through initiation worship. So that's the full quote. I remember Gurudev stressed this because there's another quote from G. in one of the purports, that in the age of Kali, all the other devotional activities should be preceded by chanting of the holy name and followed by chanting of the holy names. And although it's true about this impurity and ways to develop, which are essential for chanting the holy name. So on one side, it's not required according to Srimad Bhagavatam, but on the other side, it's recommended by the great sages because they know the condition of the people. And in that condition, they won't be able to become very deeply absorbed in bhakti because of the impurities. So, when we consider their bodily and their mental, although deity worship is not essential, but the material conditioning of most candidates for devotional service requires that they engage in this activity, deity worship. And when we consider their bodily and their mental conditions, we find that the character of such candidates is impure, and their minds are agitated. Therefore, to rectify this material conditioning, the great sage Narad and others have at different times recommended various kinds of regulations for deity worship. So now there's a quote from Ramarchana Chandrika, and it states, Vinaiva diksham vipendra, purascharyam vinaiva hi, vinaiva nyasa vidina, japa matrena siddhida. O best of the Brahmins, even without initiation, preliminary purification or acceptance of the renounced order, these three things, without initiation, without preliminary purification, or acceptance of the renounced order, one can attain perfection in devotional service simply by chanting the Lord's holy name. In other words, now Prabhupada's explaining, in other words, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, Mahamantra, is so powerful that it does not depend on official initiation. But if one is initiated and engages in Pancharatra Vidhi, deity worship, his Krishna consciousness will awaken very soon, and his identification with the material world will be vanquished. The more one is freed from material identification, the more one can realize that the spirit soul is qualitatively as good as the Supreme Soul. At such a time, when one is situated on the absolute platform, one can understand that the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical. At that stage of realization, the holy name of the Lord, the Hare Krishna mantra, cannot be identified with any material sound. If one accepts the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as a material vibration, he falls down. One should worship and chant the holy name of the Lord by accepting it as the Lord himself. One should therefore be initiated properly according to revealed scriptures under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. Although chanting the holy name is good for both the conditioned soul and the liberated soul, it's good for both. But it is especially beneficial to the conditioned soul because by chanting it, one is liberated. And when a person who chants the holy name is liberated, then he attains the ultimate perfection by returning home, back to Godhead. In the words of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 7, Krishna mantra hoite habe samsara mochan, Krishna nam hoite pabe Krishnera charan. This is very often quoted. Krishna mantra hoite habe samsara mochan. First is saying Krishna mantra, and then the second line says Krishna nama hoite pabe Krishnera charan. So the Krishna mantra is meaning Gayatri mantras and so forth. So the translation is simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, one can obtain freedom from material existence. Samsara mochan. Samsara mochan means material world. Then Krishnanam hoite pabe Krishnera charan. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one will be able to see the lotus feet of the Lord. The offenseless chanting of the holy name does not depend on the initiation process. Although initiation may depend on puja, not a very easy thing, because if it was an easy thing, everybody would be doing it. So, he's saying, if one chants the holy name, even committing an offense, he attains all success. During the chanting of the holy name, the tongue must work. Simply by chanting the holy name, one is immediately delivered. The tongue is Sevan Mukha Jiva. The tongue is controlled by Sevan Mukha, service. One whose tongue is engaged in tasting engages in devotional service, utilizing the tongue, then the Lord is revealed. So, as it is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 17, Atayeva Krishnera Nam Deha Vilas. This is the end of the purport. This is the last verse quoted. Atayeva Krishnera Nam Deha Vilas Prakritendriya Grahya Nahe Hoy Sva Prakash. The holy name of Krishna. Mahaprabhu is continuing, verse 109. Anusanga Pale. That means as a simultaneous result. Anusanga Pale. Pale means getting the result, the fruit. Anusanga Pale Kore Samsara Kshay. Samsarera Kshay. Samsara. So that means annihilation of the material world. So Mahaprabhu is telling that by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one dissolves. Then Mahaprabhu quotes this very rhythmical verse, which is included by Rupa Goswami in his anthology of verses that he compiled, which is called Padyavali. So this verse, it doesn't say who, because there's a lot of verses in there that don't have an author, but somehow Rupa Goswami has gathered them together. So here's the Sanskrit. A Krishna Sumanasam Uchatanam Chamhasam An Achandal Mamukaloka Sulabo Vashyas Chamukti Shriya No Diksham Nacha Satkriyam Nacha Purascharyam Managicchate Mantro Yam Rasana Sprig Eva Falati Shri Krishna Nam Atmaka. So it's telling Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. So it says here that when a person simply chants the holy name with his tongue, immediate effects are produced. Chanting the holy name does not depend on initiation or pious activities or the Purash. Ek Krishna Nam, say to Vaishnava, Koriho Tahara Saman. So now he's come back to the point that they were asking, how can we recognize a Vaishnava? Mahaprabhu said, who has chanted So now he finally advised, one who is chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is understood to be a Vaishnava. Therefore, you should offer all respects to him. So in his Upadeshamrita, this is the purport, Srila Rupa Goswami states, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta dikshasti chet pranati bishchakajantam, and is chanting the holy name with faith and obeisances and following the instructions of the spiritual master. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments that serving Vaishnavas is most important for householders. Whether a Vaishnava is properly initiated or not is not a subject for consideration. One may be, and yet he may be contaminated by the Mayavad philosophy, but a person who chants the holy name of the Lord offenselessly, he will not be so contaminated. A properly initiated Vaishnava may be imperfect, but one who chants the holy name of the Lord offenselessly is all perfect. Although he may apparently be a neophyte, three persons, Mukunda Das, Raghunandam, and Sri Narahari. They were inhabitants of the place called Srikanda. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Sachinandan Gaurahari, the son of Mother Sachi, next, he asked Mukunda Das, you are the father, and your son is Raghunandan. Is that so? Or is Srila Raghunandan your father, and you are his son? Please let me know the facts, so that my doubts will go away. Can you close that? The fan?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm about to sneeze. Yeah. Okay. So Mahaprabhu was testing. So when he asked that, then Shuni Harshe Kohi Prabhu Kohi Le Nishchoy. Hearing Mukunda Das give this proper decision, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed it, saying, yes. One who awakens devotion to Krishna, he is certainly the spiritual master. Here it says, Jaha hoite Krishna bhakti se guru hoy. Mahaprabhu continued. Mahaprabhu became very happy just to speak of the glories of his devotees. Indeed, when he spoke of their glories, it was as if he had explained here, at least up to where I read. It's not fully explained. But he begins to glorify Mukunda. Mahaprabhu begins to glorify Mukunda, topmost personality, who was a servant of the king, the Muslim king. And there's that example, even in Nectar of Devotion, of Mukunda was sitting on a high platform with the king, discussing. And suddenly, because it was very hot, a person came with a peacock feather fan to fan the king. And when Mukunda saw that, ecstatic symptoms came on his body because of the peacock feathers. And he actually fell off the platform. And then the king got up and came down. Are you okay? Are you okay? He says, yes, I am okay. But the king was very intelligent. He could understand, he's a very exalted spiritual personality, even though he was a Muslim king. And so indeed, when Mahaprabhu spoke of the glories of his devotees, it was as if he had 5 faces. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then informed all his devotees, please hear about Mukunda's love of Godhead. Mukunda's Nirmala Prem, his pure prem. It is very deep and pure love only be compared to purified gold. Nigudha. Nigudha means very deep. Nirmala means pure. Prem. Jena Dagda Haim. It is just exactly like clarified gold. So, now Mahaprabhu is glorifying him and he's saying, Mukunda Das externally appears to be a royal physician. Vaishnava may be engaged in governmental service or in a professional business, so that externally one cannot understand his position. Internally, however, he may be a Nitya Siddha Vaishnava, that is, an eternally liberated Vaishnava. Of course, Prabhupada is one of them, and he's explaining this. Internally, however, he may be a Nitya Siddha Vaishnava, that is, an eternally liberated Vaishnava. He was a royal physician, but internally he was the most liberated Paramahansa devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew this very well, but ordinary men could not understand it, for the activities and the plans of a Vaishnava cannot be understood by ordinary men. However, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his representative understand everything about a devotee, even though the devotee may be an ordinary householder and professional businessman. So Mahaprabhu is relating this incident. One day, Mukunda Das, the royal physician, was seated with the Muslim king on a high platform, and he was telling the king about medical treatment. And while Mukunda Das were conversing, a servant brought a fan made of peacock feathers to shade the king's head from the sun. Consequently, he held the fan above the king's head. So just by seeing the peacock-feathered fan, Mukunda Das became absorbed in ecstatic love of Godhead, and he fell from the high platform onto the ground. Being extraordinarily intelligent, the king could understand the whole affair, and in his estimation, Mukunda was a most uncommon, exalted, liberated personality. Mahasiddha. Raghunandan is constantly serving Lord Krishna in the temple. Beside the entrance of the temple is a lake, and on its banks is a kadamba tree, which daily delivers 2 flowers to be used for Krishna's service. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again spoke to Mukunda with sweet words. Your duty is to earn both material and spiritual wealth. Ordered Narahari, these 3 persons. I wish you to remain here with my devotees. In this way, the 3 of you should always execute these 3 duties for the service of the Lord. So in the purport, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu set forth 3 duties for 3 different people. Mukunda was to earn money and follow the religious principles, whereas Narahari was to remain with the Lord's devotees, and Raghunandan was to engage in the Lord's service in the temple. Thus, one person worships in the temple, another earns money honestly, by executing his professional duty, and yet another. So he said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, in this age of Kali, Krishna is manifest in 2 forms, wood and water. Thus, by enabling the conditioned souls to see the wood and to bathe in the water, he helps them to become liberated. Daru Brahma Rupe Sakshat Shri Purushottam. Bhagirati Han Sakshat Jal Brahma Sam. The Lord Jagannath is the Supreme Lord himself in the form of wood. And the river Ganges is the Supreme Lord himself in the form of water. So the purport, the Vedas enjoin Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. That means everything is the energy of the Supreme energy. So in this age, the Lord is manifest through wood as Lord Jagannath, and he is manifest through water as the river Ganga. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered the two brothers, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Vidya Vachaspati, to worship Lord Jagannath and the river Ganga. Then he told Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, you should engage in the worship of Lord Jagannath, Purushottam, and Vachaspati should worship Mother Ganges. So later on, Vidya Vachaspati went to Haridwar, and he worshipped the Ganga there. And he's also a very great scholar who taught Jiva Goswami.
We taught him in Kashi.
Kashi. What's the other name of Kashi? Varanasi. Varanasi, yes. Shi Sarvashrai. He is the origin of all incarnations and the source of everything. Vishuddha Nirmala Prem Sarva Rasamai. He is pure transcendence, and he is the reservoir of all pleasure, Sarva Rasamai. And Sakala Satgun Vrinda Ratna Ratnakar. Krishna is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. He is like a mine of gems. He is expert at everything. Vidagda, Chatur, Dhir, Rasika Shekar. He is expert at everything. He is very shy. I then requested Maharaj to see me. In catching hold of my feet and crying, he submitted an appeal. Maharaj Gupta said, I have sold my head unto the lotus feet of Raghunath. I cannot withdraw my head, for that would